All right, everyone. Welcome to Omaha Data Science Academy, class number 3 of data management and manipulation. And in this lecture, we are going to take a little bit of a half step back to review column functions from lecture 2. These are functions that either aggregate columns, so columns, numerical columns, aggregate functions such as sums, minimums and maximums, averages, and so forth. And then scalar or value functions. So any type of function that changes values one at a time in a table. So some of the common ones are date functions. So get the year, month, date out of values, or string functions and string manipulation, which we will use quite a bit in the rest of the class, but I believe this is some additional good practice and good review and a deeper dive. So we are going to take off from here. All right. So just a recap from lecture number 2. So we had this on last Wednesday. We'll do a brief recap of Sql functions. Like I said in the intro, the aggregate functions are really functions that summarize the entire column. So think of this as taking an entire column of data, if you think of a table as rows and columns, and then compressing it down by groups. So when you use aggregate functions, you should almost always use a group by function with it, because you're doing an average or a count over or sum over some groups. So the only time you wouldn't is if you're just summarizing a field over the whole table, which occasionally happens, but the majority of the time you'll use this with a group by, because you're doing, for example, sums by country. Maybe you're doing sales by product if you have a product table and you have historical sales. You could do it by dates even. So you could say, give me the margin of a certain product by day, and day would be your grouping. So you can think of aggregate functions that way. And to recap the rest of these, almost all these other ones are value functions, or scale. They also call them scalar functions in SQL. So you have your string functions. These are functions in SQL that change values one at a time in a table. So it doesn't compress data like aggregate functions do. It changes the values one at a time. So this is string functions. So you can concatenate. So if you're familiar with Excel, you could bring two different values from two different columns together, concatenate them to create one column. You can return values. So you could do a length of a string just to see how long each one of those strings is. And that will go down the table, and it'll leave a number in each one. So I'd leave 4 if the string is length 4, 6 if it's 6, and so forth. You have your left and your right functions, so you can get the left and rightmost characters. And it gives you a pretty good feel for the rest of these. Also, trim and for substring, you can get the middle of a string, and then trim, you can trim off the blanks off the front and the back of a string, which can be value and variable character strings in that data type. So one of the data types we saw was varchar, which can be variable length, and sometimes there's spaces there. Trim is a good way to take off those spaces. So control flow functions. Say if and if null, they're ones you think about as purely a function where you say if and you wrap them in parentheses. And then you'll have 3 different parameters. You'll have your conditions. So you'll have if column is equal to true, then maybe you'll say count it as 1, else count it as 0. Or if null goes down and it leaves true or false values in a column. So it goes through the columns, it tries to look if they're true or false. And if you're going down the column, if it's a blank, it will leave true there instead of blank. We will dive deeper into a case statement today. So I think this is really valuable to understand case statements and how you can use like if then else type logic in SQL. So we will, and case is one of the more like really like one of the powerful features of SQL. Instead of just getting columns, you can say if a value is equal to something, then set it equal to this. So we'll see this in a second, but it's a way of taking your data and kind of reclassifying or regrouping it, or potentially even summarizing, creating a function to summarize. Right. So date and time functions, comparison functions, both very similar. Number of functions that you can do with dates. Math functions, ceiling and floor of a number. If you have a bunch of decimal numbers, those are valuable. You'll either round up or round down. And then you can even use a round function to round a certain number of digits. Perhaps you'd want to round to 2 digits like it was dollars, if it's fractional amount of dollars. And the last one is a little bit different. While it's kind of, you can think of it as like a scalar or value function, the cast function will change the data types of your variables. So oftentimes, for example, maybe you'll have dates stored as strings, so character values instead of dates in a table. So this might be common if some system that you're working in just writes to tables and everything's in strings, and it just takes the date and puts it in there. So what you can do is that you can cast that column as a date. And as long as the SQL interpreter can kind of recognize that string is in a date format that it can recognize, it'll convert it over to a date data type. Also very valuable when you're going from strings to integers or floats or decimals. So potentially, for whatever reason, maybe it's being stored as text within a column, or maybe you're extracting the values out of a column and you want to change it over to dollars. So we'll see this, especially when we get to the union and cleaning data using SQL. We'll use the cast function quite a bit, but I think this provides a good overview. And I said this MySQL functions on MySQL tutorial gives a pretty comprehensive list of this. You can look at all the different functions MySQL has to offer there, and I get a lot of examples. But I am going to now work on showing you a couple of these myself, and then this will be a good resource to kind of refer to or have as backup. All right. So we saw this one in the last lecture. So this is an example of an aggregate function. So what is the world population by continent? So keep in mind, in these lectures, you can open up the PowerPoint or open these up in Google Drive and copy and paste these into MySQL Workbench. So I'll actually do that here now as an example. And I've also often put these down here just because of formatting. So you should be able to either copy it straight out of the lecture slide or be able to copy it out of the notes section. You can run this. Of course, I have an error in the syntax because I forgot to change this after changing my notes yesterday. And there we go. The having has to come before the order by, which I do have right in the notes, but I don't have in the, or I have in the slide, but not the notes. So I will update that. But the idea behind this is the aggregate function. So we talked about summing an entire column within the world.country table. So I'll show you this table really quick in the world dot country. And a quick way to, if you want to query a table without writing a query, I don't know if we covered this in the last two classes, but you can go down here and you can click right and you can do select rows. And if I was just to select population, you can see that it's a long list of numbers. So what the sum is going to do here is summarize that long list of numbers and then group by the different continents by stating this group by keyword or clause. So that's the idea. You'll almost always do this. You almost always use a group by. And if you have any other fields that you're using with a sum, that's something like continent or product or city or anything else that you're trying to summarize by, you'll want to use that group. Otherwise, you could do some population from world.country. Actually, I will do this. And then it'll return a single value because it's summarized over the entire table. So that's the idea behind using the group and then just a sum over a field on the entire table. A sum over the field of the entire table will return you a single value in return. All right. And then the having clause, just to restate what the having clause is, this will return all of the groups where the sum of the population is greater than 0. So this gives you your final result. Here, it actually excludes Antarctica with 0 population.
Why do you do the as total pop on the first line?
Oh, so this, the as total pop, it will give you this column name instead of just a generic. So the as keyword, it kind of works as an alias, what they call an alias in SQL. So I'll show you what happens if you don't. It just returns like sum of population, which is kind of nice because some of the databases will just say field 1 or field 2 or some generic value. MySQL actually will still tell you that it's the sum of the population. This will also come in valuable when we have multiple tables. You could name world.country as CO, and then you can refer to co.country and co.population. So you can also give the table an alias and say, here's the table and field that I want. So you'll see this come into really valuable, especially when you have probably more than 2 tables. And you will have to give your table an alias if it has the same column name in both tables. So if it would happen to have population in both, the database wouldn't know, should I get it from this one table or should I get it from the other table? So aliases are really valuable in either naming columns or giving aliases to tables, or you can also do it with subqueries also. You can name your subqueries, which is really valuable. And I think you actually have to give a subquery an alias, or otherwise it's just kind of like a blank entity. All right, did that make sense? Yep. Okay. All right, so we covered aggregate functions here. I think we're going to fly through this, and at the end of, I didn't mention at the end of this, we'll have a pop quiz over weeks 1 and 2. So not graded, but just to review some of the open notes, review of your knowledge of what you learned in the first 2 lectures, like I mentioned last week.
Hey,
But
Jeremy,
yes.
I just want to make sure. I was trying to open the MySQL workbench,
Yep.
and I got a error or something, but I just want to make sure I'm connected and I have those so I can copy and paste and test out the ones. My server status, like I don't have well, maybe I have to switch to the schema.
Yeah, let's go ahead real quick if you want to share your screen, Ronnie.
Okay.
I believe anybody else have any problem with the connection tonight? Everybody is able to connect to the Azure MySQL ODSA.
I'm good.
Yeah, it's working for me, but I also never really exited out of it. So
Well, and I didn't
That's
think I
a-
X'd out of it either, but I must have. Is it sharing yet or not?
No, not yet. I might have to stop sharing the screen for a second. There you go. Now give it a try.
Select window or screen. There.
We'll go ahead and knock this out so you're able to.
Can you see it now?
Yep. I just have to add it to the stream. Okay.
And I just basically went down and launched, and then the error, like it couldn't restore the previous session or something, but.
Yeah, it might be when it's a cloud, when you're connecting to the cloud, it times out after a while, kind of disconnects you. So go ahead and try to go to schemas.
Right here, man. And that might be all I needed, but yeah, okay. And I went down to session, so maybe I just didn't know, but right there is where I need to be, right?
Yep, try to expand world to over on the left side. There's the arrow. Try to click that so it goes down. And then tables.
Okay.
And then just right click on city or country like I did. And do like select top 1,000 rows.
Oh, right here.
Yep. Yeah, it looks like you're connected now.
Okay, and it was just hitting that schemas. I think I went down to the bottom and hit sessions and just overlooked schemas. So,
yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. I just want to make sure I could copy and paste and do what I needed to do while you're demonstrating.
Definitely, that's what this class is good for. Is that, like I was saying, we can read stop or reverse or hit the gas pedal whenever we want.
Okay, then I'm gonna stop screen sharing.
In class. All right. Ready for the rest of this lecture? I'm gonna reshare my screen. I feel like these little tickers can do like a little PSA here or something and be able to contact me if you need help. Good time for that. Well placed, I guess. There's some options. I'll have to fully get the hang of it or set these up for each lecture. But anyway, we'll run that at the bottom here just in case you have any questions. All right. So we just covered aggregate functions. We're just covering that in more detail of how it works. Good question. More there with the as keyword and adding aliases to columns and tables and subqueries. It really will start to help as the queries get more complicated and you are drawing columns in from different tables. So it helps sort it out quite a bit. And while not necessary since you're only using one table, the aliases do help you better refer to columns and tables in that manner. All right. So I will continue from the current slide. Right, control flow functions. So this is what I say in one of the more powerful aspects of SQL is the ability to do if then else logic. In case you can think of case when is exactly like an if then else, except you can have multiple cases. So you can have a case when the continent is in Asia, Africa, or Europe. You could have the case when the right 7 is like America, so that'd be like North America or South America. And then you can have a default condition. So if it's none of these, then just return me the name of the continent, which ends up being Antarctica. So really, you can use those other functions, like they're also valuable. The ifs or if nulls. The if nulls especially valuable in finding null values or non-null values in a column. So null values in a table field are ones that are completely blank. They are neither 0 or 1 or a blank string. It just has no value in it at all, which can often happen in systems because maybe there's no information to be recorded there, it's not applicable, and so forth. Or maybe you just really want to, maybe you want to return those records. Maybe you want to say what records have a null value in a certain column. Or maybe it's the opposite, just return me the values where, or try to find me the values in this column that are filled in that aren't null. But those are two different types of control functions you can use also. But case seems to be the most, I use it a lot to create these type of groupings. So here I'm creating like a Eastern and Western hemisphere. Otherwise, if it's Antarctica, I say Antarctica is like both East and West, I think. So I said don't classify it, just keep it as its own. We can still use, we just treat this like we created a column within our query, or we're returning a column. I gave it an alias as hemisphere, and then I can group by that column. Like in MySQL, we can group by this case statement as a hemisphere, and then some by population. So really a way to do like your own custom groupings. In business intelligence, this would often be a business rule. So like if a field was a bunch of different letters or short letters, or one that I'm currently working on is location IDs. They're all 3 letters. Then you could change those into the full names of the locations. So if location is ANX, BNX, whatever, then call it main office and so forth. So really a way to be able to group and put business rules to your data in a table and then return something meaningful or whatever grouping that you're looking for. Used a lot in both business intelligence and even doing analytics is part of it is grouping data in certain ways.
So when I went to go run this, I kept getting a bunch of errors.
Did you? We will give this a try. I just created this side this weekend. Did you more copy it out of the bottom part?
Yeah, so I did copy it out of the PowerPoint slide. I got an error, so then I went back and copied it out of the bottom. And I'm still...
Well, you know what? So I can tell you what it is. Sometimes in the PowerPoints, it leaves this little squiggly apostrophe instead of the straight apostrophe. And that's all it was on the end of Eastern.
Interesting.
It's just, I don't know why these PowerPoint slides do that, but, and it's not like that. It's not like that up here. But that's why I often paste these in the bottom too, in case one of those apostrophes are there. But in this case,
yeah, that worked. It ran.
One. Yeah, so once again, like these syntax, they can be very detailed and particular about exactly like what apostrophes that you use, or if you use single quotes or double quotes. Those also can mean two different things depending on what database management system that you're using. So in MySQL, when you're doing like encasing strings, you always want to use the single quotes. And then this is also a good example, this control flow function, of how you use a value or scalar function. So we're getting the right seven. We're getting the right seven characters of continent where it's equal to America. So in our country's world.country database, wherever that country, the right seven characters equal America, then we can say it's in the Western Hemisphere because that would be North and South America.
Can you go back to the actual MySQL so I can just glance at it because I'm running, but I think I pasted it into. Okay, select.
Yep, and keep in mind there's like the alternative quote or apostrophe up here on Eastern.
So that's a.
Make it the straight one that's next to the enter key. MySQL's picky about it. And then it'll look like mine. And if it helps, Ronnie, I can copy and paste this in the Slack. I'll go ahead and do that. And make sure I save and update these notes without that in there.
Yep, I got it to run. I just had a separate line 1 or whatever, so I had to get rid of line 1 from when I had it.
Yep.
Something in there from before, so that's why the difference. Nope,
Yep.
I
And
got it.
Sorry, go ahead, Ronnie. You can finish.
No, I'm good.
Oh.
You got it.
Okay, so wait, why is there a 7 after continent again?
So this is how this write function works.
Okay.
So it takes in a column, continent.
Yep.
So it's just going to look down this entire column in the table.
Okay.
And then it's always just going to look, since it's a value function, at each one of those write 7 characters. So if it helps, I could.
So what if we change the number? What if we change the number to like 9?
So that would return the right 9 characters in your and this Boolean statement, this true false statement, will no longer be true. So let's do an interesting experiment here. Let's see the difference between write 7 and write 9. We can just put these here and see what this does. And actually, let's just put continent there to look at the full continent name and see when it gets the write 7 and then the write 9. And then we could even put it right here and see what happens. Oops, select. What did we do here? Let's continent because I need to now group by these. Actually, I don't want to group by. Well, no, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. It'll work out all right. So any columns that I haven't already grouped by that aren't in an aggregate function, we need to put those in the group by statement because that's how we are summarizing this now. So, all right, so this is a good example. So here's the continent North America out of the world.country table. Here's what happens when you get the right 7. So the right 7 will get you America, right? So it starts counting from the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The right 9 will get you the 7 plus 2 more. So it'll get you this and then the space and then the H. So if you read to use right 9 in this now, this would not be true. So the right 9 would not be equal to America because it's equal to H space America. And I will show you this one in action. I kind of like this example. I think I'll paste this in the bottom of my notes. So let's see what happens. And if we take these out of our group by, and keep in mind, you can also comment out multiple lines or a big section by doing open or a / star and then a star \. This one kind of opens a comment. This one closes it. All right. So North America. Yeah, so now like we don't have this Western group because North America and South America, it's returning these, but it's not finding that these are true. It's finding that it's false. So it defaults to this last one and just names the continent.
So a quote fix could be to put H space America in your comparison, but that would be sort of sloppy, but it makes the logic work. But it also shows, and I agree with you, I like this example because I like how we can tweak it and make little changes, and it helps show how pieces of this work.
Yeah, definitely a good thing to go back and take a look at and get a deeper dive on, I think, especially when you're first learning how it works. This actually helps kind of put multiple things together. So you're using this control flow statement. Now you're using the in keyword. Like you could use this in a where statement, but it's like a true or false statement as you're looking at the continent column. And then you're going through this value by value and trying to say, is it in Asia, Africa, Europe, or Oceania? If it's true, set the label equal to Eastern. If it's not, then go down the different rows in the case statement. And if none of them are true, just default to say, I'm gonna give you the continent. So it's a good for really thinking how SQL works. You can you can, with these queries, it's sequentially in nature. It just goes from the top of the table down to the bottom of the table, either one by one or summarizing it by groups if you were using an aggregate function like population and then grouping by some other column, or in this case hemisphere. All right. I felt that was good that was a good thanks for that suggestion, Michael. I'd say this. I feel like this has been really useful to jump back in and review this.
I'm trying to earn back that $100 I owe you.
I know I have a safe way of doing it instead of doubling down here, right? Or then I just or you like 10 lunches or whatever. All right. Anyway, let's do one more and then we will jump into the quiz. I added one more exercise to the end of this to create an average life expectancy grouping where you could use a case statement like we did. But we'll save that to the end of class because we have quite a bit of lecture to go through today. And we'll make time for it at the end, but we can revisit these exercises also, which are in, if you look in Google Drive, it will be entitled Class 2 Exercise Queries. And I've added this one to the exercises for you to review. And this is definitely like a good one to play around with and see what happens, or add columns to it and so forth. All right. So the last example I want to cover here, I go in back just a half step to do this, is scalar functions. So scalar functions, like I've said a couple of times, are where you go as row by row down the table, given a certain column, and then saying, is this true? Is this true? Is this true? Or maybe you're just using a cast here in your select statement, so you're converting all of your dates to years. So you could either do this on columns that you select, strings or dates, or getting substrings or anything, concatenating two strings together. Maybe you do use a concat function and do Czech Republic, comma, then you give it the continent like Asia or something like that. You append Asia to it. Say I'm not silly, Czech Republic's in Asia, right? Otherwise I'll have to go back and do that. Pretty sure it's like the Soviet bloc just in Asia, right? But anyway. So what this one does, say state the question up here. So what countries claimed independence after 1991? So here we're kind of like want to limit our table to only the countries that have been independent since the beginning of the 1990s. So that would be a where clause. So anytime you want to, we covered in the last lecture, anytime you want to limit what you're bringing back from the table, a where clause is a perfect way to do this. So in this one, we'll select country, sum of population is the total population. So summarizing by country. I'm missing a group by in there, but from world.country, where the independence here. So there's a lot going on here. So we always evaluate, just like in school, we evaluate functions from the inside out. So it's a little bit of a silly example here, but I wanted to show how the cast would work. So it does the cast part first. So I've done the date as a string here. I can even already see we'll need to change that apostrophe, but do the cast as the string as a date, because this is going to take this and turn this into a date that's 1/1/1991. And then once it's a date, then we can apply the year function to it. So this inside statement turns a string into a date and then gets the year of the date, which would be 1991. And that's actually returned as a number to be compared against the independence year. And that's how we get to these results. So a little bit of a mouthful more. Have questions? I saw the attention perk up. So let's go ahead and run this. I already see. No, she's just super intent on what was going on. Super intense. I could tell. This is missing a.
Yeah.
No, it's actually not missing a group by. Well, yeah. Okay. Let's just wonder and see what happens.
Yeah, I wonder.
Go ahead, Michael.
Sorry to interrupt you. I wonder if you want to run the SQL that's in the comment section or not.
Yes, let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we have that nasty little apostrophe there. We do a straight quote around our strings. We have that in both places. And usually here I would group by.
I'll be taking a break shortly. You're in my picture, so watch out.
Group by country, because we gave this an alias, and that should work to be able to group it that way. And then order by independence year descending. So I'll go from the newest down to the oldest. Go ahead and run this.
So it worked for me when I didn't include a group by. But do we want the group by?
I feel like we do because, well, the country might be on the country level here. So it doesn't.
I'm sorry, Jeremy.
Yeah, so it's actually just, this is kind of a different situation here. So it's actually summarizing this row by row. So this sum that did I just get rid of that by accident? All right, let's actually just repull this query here. So the sum doesn't really do anything in this case, so I will tell you why here after I fix this. And that's not even the original that you had either. Okay.
Oh, are those two different ones?
Country.
Is the PowerPoint and the comments two different things?
Order by independence year.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Jeremy, I think that there's a different SQL between what's in the PowerPoint presented versus PowerPoint comment.
Okay. Does it look like this? Country, sum of total pop, world.country, independence year. That one looks okay now, right? So I'll make that update too. I'll tell you why unknown country, and this actually needs to be name as country. So we actually put the backticks around this. So this is an interesting case where name is actually a SQL keyword. So we need to tell it that it's a name by putting these backticks, and you see that it turns like a maroon color. An aggregated query without group by.
Where are the backticks? Ah,
Those would be like next to the 1 on your keyboard, just to the left of it.
yes. Okay. I got a no-go on that one.
Question 1 order by clause is not in the group by clause. There we go. I think that looks different than everybody else's query, doesn't it?
Yes. Where?
And Jeremy, are you able to make that MySQL a little bigger so we can see it a little better?
Yes, definitely.
There you go. Thanks.
All right. Michael, I think he has the correct one here that was in the slides previously. All right. How did I double check this before I added it this weekend? Oh, Michael, this one's a different one, right? This one's from the previous slide.
No, it's from the same slide. It just matches the image that you have in the slide. That's all I was just trying to share with you.
The scalar value function slide.
Yeah, no, this same page, like your comments down below, that SQL matches up with your image, and then the SQL that you have, yeah, and then your SQL.
Oh yeah, I think I must have pasted that from the previous slide and pasted it in this one. So this is a query everyone sees, right? Select country from world.country where independence year. Does this one look like everybody else's?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see that in the main part. Yep.
Yeah. All right, so let's run this. And
Is this
column.
Is this the one we had to say select name as country?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no country field. It's actually called name in this table. An aggregated query. And Maury, you were able to run that?
No, not that one.
No, I've got a X in front of my line 4 and line 5. Where independent year.
No, that was a different one. This one I was not able to run.
I'm actually going to change this up a little bit to get the result here that we got in the slide. So we want to return country, independence year, and we had a start year here. Okay, I might have to take a look at this here. This is just like not the same query that, say, I don't know what happened on this one. This one's not the same query that returns this result. So I'll take a look. The idea here is that we can use these scalar functions in the where, or we can use it here, in the select to be able to return your values. So I'll double check this during break, but we'll keep moving forward here.
Because I did run. I don't know where I got this, but I ran something and I got that result. I just am not entirely sure where I got this.
Sure, what I did.
I
My
got 3 in total pop, and that's all I got.
I wonder if I did like an older version of this or something, or if somebody's were pulling up different versions of it. All right. I'll double check that at break. How about that? That's the idea behind the scalar functions. I was doing this one value at a time, and this one does a comparison. And this is even a composite function. So you have a function inside of another function to do that comparison. All right. So this is actually a good time to jump into the quiz I've put together. And I will give everybody the link to this quiz. I have it in Google Forms. Now, there are also practice quizzes out in the Google Drive under the quizzes folder where you can get additional practice. But this one's kind of the standard quiz I've given to the last couple of classes. So I will copy and paste this into Slack. And I will give everyone about 10 minutes and then we will review the results. Sound good? And feel free to use your notes. We do these all open notes, and a couple of these will be easier when you're selecting all that are true. If you have your notes open, and then you could say, you can take a look at the different SQL clauses. And I'd have lectures 1 and 2 open, and then you could take a look at that and say, here are the different clauses. Just a hint, that would be in lecture 2, or maybe lecture 1 too. I mean, not much of a hint, but feel free to use your notes, especially. I guess I'm saying feel free to use your notes, especially on the check all that are true, or listing SQL data types and so forth.
Jeremy, just a question. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Should we combine break and quiz together, or just get the quiz done and then come back in 10?
I was going to cover it as part of the video, but we don't have to. We could take it in the video, and everybody could take a break, and we could cover it when we get back.
I'm sorry. We're going to take this together?
Yeah, I was going to walk through it.
Cool. Sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah, no problem. I kind of rambled there, so apologies. Kind of thinking out loud. Actually, let's go ahead and take the break. I'll end the lecture on this one. We don't have to cover the quiz answers in the lecture. So, as everyone is doing this, I am going to flip to the final slide. And do my outro here. Thank you for joining us for a review of Lecture 2, covering aggregate and value and scalar functions. The next lecture will be lecture number 3, which covers extracting and storing data from relational databases. See you then. Bye.